we did get rulings from two different federal judges that said, nope, the government has to fund the SNAP program. They have to fund the old name was food stamps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's the Supplemental Nutrition Assurance Program. Did I get that right?
Assurance or assistance? Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. So it's assistance. You're right. Thank you. So nearly 900,000 Arizonans were at risk of losing the SNAP benefits because of the government shutdown. Now, the state says that they're going to help out, right? They're going to step in. They're going to do what they can. However, these judges say, no. The courts have to bring it back. They got to return the SNAP benefits. And so as far as I know, they should be right back, right? Right? That's it. No problems.
Lots of problems.
Lots of problems, yeah, especially when it comes to the courts, because as we know, the courts don't usually move very quickly. Do we have, is Barry ready to go? Our KTAR legal analyst?
He is.
All right. Barry, a couple of courts here, a federal judge in Rhode Island ruling from the bench the program has to be funded using the contingency funds, or at least use the contingency funds. Another judge in Massachusetts said that the administration has until Monday to say whether they would partially pay for the benefits with contingency money or find other funds for those. Is there a reason if someone is a SNAP recipient for hope that things are going to get better quickly?
Yeah, I think things are going to get better quickly. I mean, we don't know if the Trump administration is going to appeal both of these rulings. I mean, that would literally be President Trump and the White House arguing that Americans who need food assistance should not get it in an emergency time. So I would hope they won't do that. But the court didn't just order them to do that. They said that it's illegal, that what the Trump White House is doing, trying to deny SNAP benefits during a shutdown, is actually illegal, that it violates the law. So I would expect you're going to see these SNAP accounts funded relatively quickly. It's important to note that in some states, this money goes to the states and then the states put it on each individual's card. That can sometimes take a week. So some people who maybe would normally get their card reloaded on the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd, they may not get it for a little bit longer, but money should be flowing relatively quickly unless the administration appeals.
KTAR News legal expert Barry Markson joins us. Barry, these judges in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island gave the Trump administration leeway on whether to fund the program in full or partially for November. Why the option there? And if partial funding, what does that look like? Is that 10%? Is that 90%? Is it half? How's that going to work?
Well, it costs about $9 billion a month, give or take, to fund SNAP. That's what it costs the United States each month. There's a $5 billion reserve fund that sits in the government that is there to fund this stuff. So the courts have said, you have to tell us by Monday, are you going to just use that $5 billion reserve, which would obviously get us about a half a month, maybe a little bit more of funding, or there's also apparently another $25 billion, give or take, that could be available, that is available to be used for this. The Trump administration has to let the court know what they're going to do. So that's why it could be partial funding or full funding.
Barry Markson, KTAR legal analyst, you talked about appeals and that, the administration would basically have to argue that the people shouldn't eat. However, they defended this in the first place, right? So it wouldn't be like it's a novel defense. I mean, the administration went to court in both Massachusetts and in Rhode Island and stood in front of federal judges making that argument already. Why wouldn't they do that with an appeals court or run this all the way up to the Supreme Court?
They may do that, Chris. I mean, you have to understand there was an internal memo in the Department of Health and Human Services that runs SNAP that said legally we have to use these reserve funds in the event of a shutdown. They withdrew the memo. The administration forced them to withdraw that memo and then said, we're not going to fund SNAP. They're obviously, and they've stated this isn't a secret, they're trying to do that for leverage in the shutdown negotiation with the Democrats. So they know Democrats don't want people to go hungry. So I guess they thought the Democrats would cave, and that's the way you'd get this done. Instead, the courts have stepped in. You have to remember there were 25 states that sued the Trump administration, including Arizona, and Attorney General Chris Mays was part of one of those suits. And basically, the courts have found that this was illegal. What the Trump administration did, it was illegal. It wasn't a decision to be made. It was a law, and they violated the law. So the courts are saying they can't violate the law. They have to do this. But Chris, you're right. I mean, I find it hard to believe that an American administration is going to go to court to say, no, we're not going to take money that's sitting here to be used for Americans that need food assistance. We refuse to do that. But they did it already. So you're right. Maybe they will take it the next step.
Talking with KTAR News legal analyst Barry Markson. Barry, if the Trump administration appeals this ruling, is SNAP funded or not funded during the appeal? And how quick will we see a final ruling on all of this? When does the appeals process extinguish itself?
It's a good question. I would think the appellate courts would move relatively quickly, but appellate courts don't move fast. So that would take at least another few days for one appellate court, and then if you go take it to the Supreme Court. But the other part of this is that it would depend on whether the lower court or the appellate court issued a stay on the lower court's ruling. So they could file the appeal, but the lower court can stay. You can appeal it, and you can figure out whether we're wrong on the legal issues. But in the meantime, you need to fund SNAP. Or they can stay the decision. I would think in these circumstances, because of the emergency and the harm that would be done to millions and millions of Americans, tens of millions of Americans, I would think the court would force the funding to occur while the legal issue was decided. But again, that's up to the judge.
All right. Barry Markson, our KTAR legal analyst. Barry, we always appreciate your insight and your knowledge of these matters. Thank you, my friend. Always great to have you on the show.
Thanks, guys. Chris, good to see you. Joe, you look a little scary right now.
Yeah, we're already getting comments too, Barry, on the KTAR YouTube channel. One said someone suggested Joe come in as Uncle Fester. Instead, he dressed as Cousin It. So that's I think that's pretty clever.
I'm me with hair.
Yeah. All right, Barry, thank you so much, my friend. All right, very good. Yeah. Am I the only one that is a little bit frustrated that the government shutdown seems to be this argument over should people eat or should people be able to have health insurance?
It's a sibling fight on a grand United States scale.
And, we've talked about before how the stakes just aren't there for the politicians themselves. And that's what I think is so frustrating for so many of us, because it's not as though the politicians are going to lose their health insurance, or it's not as though the politicians are going to lose their food source, right?
No, they're getting paid right now, too.
Exactly. And I think that's incredibly frustrating for many Americans watching the sibling fight, as you put it, Joe, go on in Washington right now. And isn't it odd that they're willing to gamble with food? We know that they're funding, and by the way, this is not an indication that I'm in favor of not paying soldiers, but isn't it funny that they find money for able-bodied men and women to get paid? They find money for a number of other, I would say, politically leaning groups to get paid. But when it comes to making sure people eat, well, that's something we can use as leverage.
Thanks for watching The Chris and Joe Show. Click to see more from Chris and Joe, and tap the button in the middle to subscribe to KTAR News.